In this video, we'll discuss about the classification and some variants of lung tumors. Lung tumors are the most frequent malignancy worldwide with 1.1 million cases every year, and smoking is the most important factor for the development of lung cancer. The prognosis of lung cancer is so poor that if 100 people get diagnosed with lung cancer, then the chances of them surviving for the next 5 years is 10%. So only 10 out of the 100 people will survive for the next 5 years after diagnosis. Lung tumors can be classified based on three things. So the first is WHO 2015 classification, which is a histologic type of a classification. Next, there is clinical grouping. So whenever you diagnose a lung tumor, you'll have to treat it by different modalities, right? So based on the path of that treatment, there is a clinical grouping done. And lastly, anatomical distribution. Based on that also, lung tumors can be classified. So talking about the first type of classification, which is WHO classification. So lung tumors based on histology can be classified as either primary or secondary. And in primary, it could either be epithelial, mesenchymal, lymphohistiocytic, or tumors of ectopic origin. And in secondary, these are nothing but metastatic tumors. So the second classification was based on clinical grouping. So here two types you can classify lung tumors as. First is SCLC or small cell lung carcinoma, and the second is non-SCLC, that is non-small cell lung carcinoma. So small cell lung carcinoma, although is highly metastatic, the treatment, the response to chemotherapy treatment is very good. So that is why you classify in clinical grouping into these two groups. The third classification is based on the anatomical distribution of the tumor itself. So it can be classified, the tumors can be classified into either central tumors or peripheral tumors. So central tumors are those tumors which are close to the hilum of the lung or very close to the main airways of the lung. Peripheral tumors, however, are close to the terminal bronchioles and respiratory acinas. One more thing is, since during smoking, most of the smoke will get in contact with the larger airways, the risk of smokers developing central tumors is much more as compared to peripheral tumors. Thirdly, lymph node involvement may be seen early in the disease in central tumors, whereas in peripheral tumors, it can be seen later on in the disease. And classical examples for central tumors are squamous cell carcinoma of lung as well as small cell carcinoma of lung. And the classical example for a peripheral tumor would be adenocarcinoma of lung. Here you can see an image representing central tumors and peripheral tumors. So central tumors are very close to the main bronchus there, whereas peripheral tumor is commonly seen near the edges of the lung. Coming to the commonest type of lung tumor, so this is based on histology of the lung tumors. So the most common type of lung tumors to be seen is adenocarcinoma, which accounts to 38%. Second one is squamous cell carcinoma, which amounts to 20%. Third is small cell carcinoma, which accounts for 14% of the cases. Large cell carcinoma accounting for 3%, and rest, which accounts for 25%. So in the clinical classification, right, clinical grouping, we said that we classified into two groups. First is SCLC and second one is non-SCLC. So apart from small cell carcinoma, everything else falls under non-SCLC clinical grouping. So this is the expansion of the previous list that you saw. So here is a detail of all the primary epithelial tumors of the lung. So in this slide, I basically want you to focus on four precursor lesions. So first two are the precursor lesions for adenocarcinoma of the lung. So their names include atypical adenomatous hyperplasia, that is the first condition. Second one is adenocarcinoma in situ. Next precursor lesion is for squamous cell carcinoma of the lung. The name of it is squamous cell carcinoma in situ. The other name for that is high grade squamous dysplasia. Next is the precursor lesion for neuroendocrine tumors. It is called diffuse idiopathic pulmonary neuroendocrine cell hyperplasia. Next, coming to some of the general features of carcinoma lung. So carcinoma lung generally occurs between the ages of 40 to 70 years. Peak incidence, however, is seen 50 to 60 years of age. Then multiple risk factors are there for developing lung carcinoma. However, the most important factor is smoking. Going to the etiopathogenesis of carcinoma of lung. So I told you smoking is the most important factors. So whenever a cigarette is smoked, so many stuff is inhaled into the lungs. So common examples are, the common examples of all those chemicals are, first is tar, then there is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, then nitrosamine, benzopyrene, phenol, etc. Smokers are said to possess about 10 times the risk of developing carcinoma lung as compared to a non-smoker. Since I had shown you some of the precursor lesions, I would like to sort of explain how those precursor lesions go on to become proper carcinomas. So initially in this diagram you see there is normal epithelium, then the cells at the base, they increase in number, so that is called basal cell hyperplasia. Later on it becomes a proper squamous metaplasia wherein the ciliated columnar cells are completely replaced by squamous cells here. Then later on there is dysplasia, like you see the size of the nucleus has increased, then the cytoplasm color has varied due to different constituents of the cytoplasm including keratin. Later on it becomes carcinoma in situ. So the difference between dysplasia and carcinoma in situ or high grade dysplasia is that in CIS or high grade dysplasia, all the nuclei of all these cells in the entire thickness of the epithelium is involved, whereas in dysplasia, in earlier grades of dysplasia, not all cells are involved. Lastly, there is invasive carcinoma, where these dysplastic cells, these tumor cells invade the basement membrane and get into the mesenchymal component. So this is an example for how squamous dysplasia, that is carcinoma in situ, progresses on to become squamous cell carcinoma of the lung. After smoking, there are some other hazards which can give rise to carcinoma of lungs. So one example is ionizing radiation in Japan, which was seen after Hiroshima-Nagasaki atomic bombing. Then there is people who are employed to mine uranium. So since uranium is a radioactive substance, it can give rise to lung carcinoma in them. Then last is asbestosis. In the previous video we had discussed that asbestosis, apart from giving mesothelial cancers, can also give rise to lung cancers. There also are some other risk factors in which urban people are more prone to develop lung carcinoma due to exposure to polycyclic hydrocarbons. Then vitamin A deficiency. Then lastly, polymorphisms in cytochrome P1A1 gene. So all these things can give rise to carcinoma of lung. So the first tumor we'll be discussing about is adenocarcinoma of lung. Since I told you that adenocarcinoma is the most frequent carcinoma of lung to occur. So patients of adenocarcinoma are generally less than 40 years of age, and they usually are women and non-smokers. Adenocarcinoma, like we saw in the anatomical classification, it was based peripherally in the lung, and they form small masses but metastasize early on. So differential diagnosis for adenocarcinoma includes metastatic adenocarcinoma. For example, a carcinoma arising in the ovary and later on spreading to the lungs. Coming to the molecular mechanisms involved in the development of adenocarcinoma, remember mutations in tyrosine kinase gene and mutations in KRAS gene. Grossly, these adenocarcinomas are irregular and grey-white in color, and they are small, peripheral tumors and small in size. Microscopy-wise, adenocarcinoma should resemble glands, right? So adeno means glands. So whenever an adenocarcinoma is well differentiated, most of the tumor population will be made of glands. There are different variants also. So those variants include acinar type of adenocarcinoma, lepidic pattern, solid pattern, papillary, micropapillary, etc. Here is an HRCT image where you are able to see a small mass located at the periphery of the right lung as indicated by the red arrow there. So that's what adenocarcinoma would appear like under imaging. This is a gross image wherein you are able to see a peripheral greyish white tumor as marked by the arrow, and it is not that big, it's a small tumor. Microscopy wise, although there are numerous histologic variants of adenocarcinoma, the one you have to remember is the conventional type of the adenocarcinoma as shown in the image here. In this image, you are able to make out that some of the tumor cells are arranged in a glandular pattern. So that is why it is called adenocarcinoma. However, not all the tumor cells are arranged in the form of glands. So that is why you call it a moderately differentiated adenocarcinoma. If at all the or most of the tumor cells were arranged in a glandular pattern, then you could call it a well differentiated adenocarcinoma. The next tumor we'll have a look at is squamous cell carcinoma. So squamous cell carcinoma is generally more in men as compared to women. And these are central tumors. They arise close to the hilum of the lung and they involve the hilar lymph node much earlier in the course of the disease. However, they disseminate or metastasize later on in the course of the disease as compared to other histologic types. Coming to the molecular mechanisms in the development of squamous cell carcinoma, you have to remember a few genes here. First is P53 gene, which is a tumor suppressor gene. Second one is an oncogene, that is FGFR, fibroblast derived growth factor receptor 1 gene. And the last is EGFR, which is epidermal growth factor receptor gene. So mutations in these three genes commonly cause squamous cell carcinoma of the lung. Grossly, squamous cell carcinoma is a central tumor in that it arises close to the hilum of the lung. It's an intraparenchymal growth and it is an exophytic growth. So it may arise from the airway and produce a growth into the airway. So if that happens, then it can cause atelectasis, resorption atelectasis. The color of the tumor on cut surface is grey-white, similar to what you saw in adenocarcinoma. However, the size is slightly larger and there may be areas of hemorrhage or necrosis in the tumor. Sometimes what happens is the necrosis in the middle is so big that it can form a cavity. Here is a chest X-ray image showing a large tumor in the right lung. And it's close to the hilum also. It's a central tumor. So likely this is a squamous cell carcinoma. Here are two gross images. In the left side image, you are able to see a grey-white tumor involving the central area of the lung. There also below that you are able to see a cavitary lesion. So maybe necrosis has happened and a portion of it is become a cavity. On the right side image, you are able to see something that is a gray white lesion that is stuck to the trachea, possibly a mediastinal lymph node that has been infiltrated by a squamous cell carcinoma. Microscopy wise, there are different variants for squamous cell carcinoma. For example, keratinizing variant, non-keratinizing variant, basaloid variant, which looks like BCC, etc. And also there are differentiations like well differentiated, moderately differentiated, or poorly differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. The conventional squamous cell carcinoma, the appearance is like this. It will basically have islands of squamous cells, and based on differentiation, the appearance will change. Here you can see that the tumor cells are adherent to each other. So that is one sign of differentiation. Since most of the tumor cells are adherent to each other, this can be called a well differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. In this image, the arrow points to the desmosomes which are connecting two tumor cells. These are called intercellular bridges, and if a majority portion of the tumor consists of cells having intercellular bridges, then it is called a well differentiated tumor. One more sign of good differentiation in a squamous cell carcinoma is the presence of keratin pearls. The third important lung tumor is small cell carcinoma. So small cell carcinoma cases are known for early disseminations and associations with paraneoplastic syndromes. Electron microscopy wise, they have a specific feature which is the presence of dense cytoplasmic granules, and immunohistochemistry wise, there is a good marker called neuron specific enolase. Molecular genetics wise, some of the genes may be mutated which can lead to small cell carcinoma. So those are p53 gene 1, retinoblastoma gene second one, and the third one is MYC family genes. Morphology wise, majority of the small cell carcinomas are central tumors. Very few tumors are peripheral in location. Grossly, they are white to yellowish, soft and very delicate. They show too much of necrosis and hemorrhage. Two gross images of small cell carcinomas. The color you can clearly make out has a yellowish shade to it. So it's a whitish yellow colored tumor. And look at how disseminated they are. So you saw both squamous cell carcinoma as well as adenocarcinoma. So both were single tumors. Here there are multiple tumors. Microscopy of small cell carcinoma shows small round to fusiform cells with scant cytoplasm. So they can be oval in shape also. Second feature is nuclear molding. So nuclear molding means when two cells are close to each other, one nucleus causes indentation in the shape of another nucleus. I'll show you in the image this one. Third one is salt and pepper pattern of chromatin. So there is fine chromatin as well as interspersed coarse chromatin. Third is high mitotic count. So since the tumor is rapidly proliferating, the number of mitosis in the tumor is very high. And electron microscopy feature we already saw. Neurosecretory granules are there. These are dense granules present in the cytoplasm. The tumor cells of small cell carcinoma generally are very delicate or friable. If there is any amount of pressure on the cell, they will just break. Okay. So this is the picture showing one such phenomenon known as Azzopardi effect. So Azzopardi effect means the presence of bluish DNA material of the cells which have been destroyed lining the blood vessel which is close to the tumor. In this image, you are able to see two important features. So the first is nuclear moldings. So nuclear moldings have been pointed out by the yellow arrows, and I have drawn figures adjacent to it so you can see it properly. So one cell taking the shape of the nucleus of another cell, since they are in close proximity to each other. So that is what nuclear molding is. Second feature is pointed out by the red arrow here, that is mitosis. Since this is a tumor which is proliferating at a high rate, at a fast pace, that is why numerous mitotic figures you'll be able to see in the tumor. So one such thing I have pointed out and drawn a diagram beside it as well. So this microscopic image shows the chromatin arrangement. So if you look at the nucleus, inside the nucleus, there are numerous multiple dots. So those are the chromatin which are arranged in salt and pepper pattern. Lastly, coming on to large cell carcinoma, relatively rare in frequency compared to other three, and it's a diagnosis of exclusion. So large cell carcinoma is an undifferentiated malignant tumor. Undifferentiated means there is no much resemblance to any of the other cells, any other mature cell. For example, it does not look like a squamous cell. It does not look like an adenocarcinoma cell, like that. That is why this is called a diagnosis of exclusion. You need to rule out all other tumors before giving the diagnosis of large cell carcinoma. And microscopy wise, large cell carcinoma consists of large anaplastic polygonal cells not resembling either squamous cell or adenocarcinoma cell or small cell carcinoma cell, and has a vesicular nuclei. So we'll discuss about some of the changes brought about by lung tumors. So the first is emphysema. If a tumor is incompletely blocking an airway, it can give rise to emphysema. If it is completely blocking an airway, then it can give rise to atelectasis. There can be hemoptysis, wherein the tumor invading a blood vessel causes loss of integrity of the blood vessel, leading to coughing up of bloody sputum. Then there is pleural effusion if the tumor is going on to involve the pleura. There can be Horner syndrome, in which sympathetic chain is involved by the tumor, and the tumor can elaborate various hormone-like substances, giving rise to paraneoplastic syndromes. Here is a list of various paraneoplastic syndromes that you see in lung cancer. So first is SIADH, that is caused by antidiuretic hormone leading to hyponatremia. So this is seen in small cell carcinoma of lung. Second is Cushing syndrome due to excessive secretion of ACTH from the tumor. This is also seen in small cell carcinoma of lung. Third one is hypercalcemia due to secretion of PTH related peptide. This is seen in squamous cell carcinoma of lung. Then there is calcitonin production, which may be seen in small cell carcinoma of lung. Gonadotropin synthesis also, which may be seen in small cell carcinoma of lung. And lastly, serotonin and bradykinin, which may be seen in neuroendocrine tumors of the lung. Last bunch of tumors are metastatic tumors that we are going to discuss. So lung is a common site of metastasis, and any type of tumor can metastasize to lung, virtually any type of tumor. Routes include hematogenous or lymphatic or by direct spread, and common sources from which the tumor metastasizes to lung include carcinoma of gastrointestinal tract, carcinoma of breast, thyroid, kidney, pancreas and liver. Morphologically, metastatic tumors generally are multiple in number as compared to primary tumors. So primary tumors generally were discrete and only single nodules were usually there. However, in metastatic it is multiple nodules and they involve all lobes. Here is a chest X-ray image showing multiple round opacities. So each of these round things is one site of metastasis, right? So since they look round, the name given for this appearance is cannonball appearance. And presence of cannonball appearance in the lung, multiple cannonball appearance is is said to be one of the features of metastasis coming to the lung. So these are two gross images, cut surfaces showing multiple nodules, very characteristic of a metastatic disease. This is a microscopic image of a metastatic tumor present in the blood vessel. So this possibly is a hematogenous spread coming to the lung. There are various diagnostic modalities for treatment of lung tumors. So firstly, we'll discuss some clinical points. So cough, weight loss, breathlessness, increased production of sputum, then hemoptysis. These are some of the common symptoms. In sputum cytology, what is done is the sputum of the patient is examined after staining to look for any malignant cells. Yield, however, is a bit low in sputum cytology. Next is bowel fluid cytology. So bowel is bronchoalveolar lavage. So what is done is some fluid is inserted into the airway and then it is removed out, and that fluid can be examined to look for malignant cells. Next, coming to CT guided FNAC. So all these sputum and bowel fluid cytology till now that you saw, they provide a better yield for central tumors since they are present close to the hilum of the lung. Next, CT guided FNAC are specifically for peripheral tumors which are not accessible by other means of diagnosis, because central tumors generally, heart is in the mediastinum, right? So it is not advisable to pierce a needle to sample central tumors. The next modality is EBUS FNA, so endobronchial ultrasound guided FNA. So this is much more useful in sampling a central tumor as compared to a CT guided FNAC. Then there is bronchoscopy with brush cytology, wherein a tube is inserted into the airway and there are small brushes with which you scrape the surface of a tumor and examine it under microscope. Then lastly, there is bronchoscopy with biopsy. However, the disadvantage of bronchoscopy with biopsy is that the tissue bit that you get is very small and it may not always be enough for the diagnosis. So with this, we have completed most of the respiratory system. Now, since it is a coronavirus outbreak, we'll have a small class on coronavirus disease in the next video.